Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's executive. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Convener, we have apologies from Bailey Buchanan and also from Councillor Hannah.
Okay, thank you for that. And do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Devine.
I will have to excuse myself from item number 9 this morning because I've been working with the group since we started taking over the toilets at the very beginning. So I'll have to excuse myself.
Okay, thank you for that. No other declarations of interest. Move on to the minute of the executive held on the 3rd of April. Papers have been circulated. Are we happy to agree? Are there any matters arising or any questions in relation to the minute? No. Go to item 4, which is the rolling action log, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Convener. And as usual, the rolling action log provides information where the executive has requested further reports. The only item on the rolling action log that I would draw your attention to is 698 on the report titled No Place in Politics, that had originally been anticipated to report back to the executive, but the discussion with the sounding board is such that it's now agreed that the report will come to the meeting of the full council, and that's anticipated to be to the June meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions in relation to the rolling action log? No. Okay, thank you. Our first substantive item is the Road Safety Plan 2025 to 2030. There has just been an amendment circulated that consolidates the previous 2 submissions, but would then be accepted as part of the administration's motion if that is agreed. Therefore, I'll put that out there at this moment in time so that people have got an opportunity to get that consideration as we go through the process. But I'll now open it up firstly for questions to any from any members to officers. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Just a quick question for Barry or David. I'm happy with the proposals that's been brought forward and the amendments has been brought forward. However, I'm sure these issues that are incorporated in the amendment, these were discussed when we had the briefing at the rollout of the 20 mile an hour first one at Earth, and I'm sure that the views of the elected members or their concerns were raised then, the same concerns, and I'm sure that the report was coming back. Once we've done the first couple, a report's coming back to the council or to the executive to say these are the positives, these are the negatives, and this is how we address it. Was that the case, or am I just making that up?
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Through yourself, Councillor Kerr, that is not the case. Within the report that was approved in March 2024 committee, there was no recommendation for a further report for 20 mile an hour.
Thank you. I knew I was making up then.
It would be good to get that clarification. Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, that is a useful clarification, and I think I'm pleased to see the amended adjusted motion, which I'm just kind of taking in now. But obviously the part that I brought forward on the 20 mile an hour 20 mile an hour limit zones and looking at making sure that full data analysis. I think we did discuss that. It's fair to say we did discuss that, and it's kind of why I've written it as affirms. But I want to ask, having since that period, we've obviously had the implementation, particularly at Earth, and we've had the first set of data that's come back. And I want to ask maybe Gary or David about that data, which they were good enough to share with me and have a look through. We talked previously about the kind of how guidance had kind of changed around where previously we maybe wouldn't have implemented a pilot because the 85th percentile speed was not indicating a kind of safe level to do so, that recommended under 24. Can you say anything more about like explaining that and why, like from what I can see in the data, if you can confirm that it seems across the board it's maybe between 80 and 90% in most of the points where there is not compliance. There's a reduction in average speed, but there's not compliance with the posted speed limit. And the 85th percentile in many cases indicates closer to a 30 mile an hour or even slightly more in some cases. Could you talk a bit about that and clarify what the data shows in that regard?
Through yourself, convener, I certainly can, Councillor Murtagh. So there's probably two things to note here at this moment in time, and obviously the 85th percentile that you discussed there is how we design roads nowadays. We design roads to the 85th percentile, and after we went to executive last year in March, there was an implementation guide sent from Transport Scotland to all local authorities, which noted mean speeds, which is obviously an average speed, so that it was the average speed that was to be below 25 miles an hour was basically to be seen as a success. So slightly different from 85th percentile to mean speeds. However, looking at the data at Earth, we had our post-implementation surveys at Earth. We've also had post-implementation surveys at Allendale, Fancott and Stonywood. I'll touch on Earth first. Obviously, that was the first pilot, and we had 11 survey locations, and overall we've seen between a 3 to 6 miles an hour drop in speed limits, mean speed, sorry. We are analysing that. There has obviously been a signs-only approach commenced. We've now got roundels on the carriageways, and we are looking at this moment in time after the post-implementation surveys of is there ways that we can reduce that further. Probably not to speak too much about the amendments at this moment in time, but I'm pretty happy that I can come back with a report at some point to provide you with further data to show all these phase one settlements and the pilot at Earth, where they were, where they now are, and how we would look to reduce that speed and what that could potentially cost. Just touching on other areas, Allendale has been probably quite a contentious area. And we had, I think, 7 locations in Allendale, obviously quite a straight road, a kind of semi-rural location. And there has been, in areas that we probably didn't expect it, a reduction in 7 miles per hour to the mean speed, not at the residential area, more where the bowling green and the football club is. So we are seeing a substantial decrease in mean speeds. However, some of the areas haven't got to that key target of 25 miles an hour mean speed yet. So we are currently looking at all these areas, implementing the other 29 settlements in Falkirk Council, but also looking at areas how we can reduce and provide engineering measures potentially to reduce that to the number we're looking at. What I would also say is that in the original report in March 2024, we had a caveat that stated that if there was areas that were just simply not complying, we were comfortable enough to drop them back to 30 miles an hour. The big word from the Transport Scotland guidance is that it has to be appropriate. And if cars aren't travelling at appropriate speeds due to the road geometry, due to the lack of residential frontage, we are more than happy that these then can't go forward as 20 miles an hour areas, and we would revert them back.
Thank you. And I think that, I really welcome the reduction in average speed, which is helpful. I think we discussed time about why, well, you can have average speed reduction. Actually, when we're talking in this paper about road safety, that there are road safety implications for an increase in variable speed, so unpredictability of what speed cars are going, both for the drivers and pedestrians, and that can in itself actually make the situation more dangerous, even if you're reducing average speed. In terms of when, obviously we're not the first to implement 20 mile an hour pilots, and I looked at likes of in the Borders and Fife and other places. is it the case, because what you're saying there's like amending the 20 mile an hour, it might not be appropriate to keep them, but what seems to have happened in some of those areas is, for example, going through a village or a town, it was not appropriate to have the first part because that wasn't being successful, because that wasn't complying, but so they've maybe reduced the extents of the scheme but not scrapped it altogether. Is that the kind of thing that we could look at? We could look at saying, here's a large stretch of a village, the middle part or this part works, you were identifying Perth and Allendale are particularly successful, but these areas it's not working, and actually we could amend from a TCR process to move to permanence the extents of the scheme rather than scrapping it altogether. Is that the case?
Through yourself, convener. In short, Councillor Murtagh, yes. So there was two sets of guidance previously. Transport Scotland had a more of a spaces for people set of guidance, and then they brought out the current guidance that we have, which denoted basically a different criteria. So there was areas that we, using engineering judgment and local knowledge, that we thought perhaps against the criteria that we had assessed it from the Transport Scotland side of things, that may not comply with meeting the limits that they wanted us to get to. I think Ayre's probably a good example of that. Obviously, your local constituency, the south area of the village was one of these areas in the guidance where it stated that potentially would require traffic calming measures or speed reduction measures, as it were. So absolutely, we would look at perhaps reducing these areas of 20 mile an hour limits to areas that are more appropriate, rather than going full hog and doing something that potentially could, one, cost the council a high amount of money, and potentially then not be still not be compliant.
Okay, I mean that's helpful. I think with that clarity and the understanding that on a road, this is about a road safety basis, and that I suppose, would you agree then that there are, like you mentioned, Ayres in that south area, which is not too far from where I'm sitting just now, and I think what's important to illustrate is that the area, that if you have an area, and I think when we looked at kind of those kind of points, you're actually talking the average centile per speed even now is still around 30 or even over in the extremities. So it's that way that you might never be able to make it compliant, even if you put in additional measures. It's just the road's geometry just doesn't work for it. So I suppose from that point,
just to remind, this is questions, and your questions have been very, very long. And just to remind people that the amendments do talk about a report coming back on the pilot, which will go to scrutiny, and they'll allow members to have a far more in-depth conversation and all the data in front of us, rather than picking out sections. So if I could ask you to be very brief if you've got any further questions.
I appreciate that, convener. I'm trying to find a way that these points can be made so that we can just have one amendment and we don't have to move them all, and that will cut down our time vastly. So yeah, I mean, just to ask Guy that in terms of that point, that if we have non-compliant, there are areas that we could maybe never make non-compliant unless we spent absolutely endless amounts of money on them, basically.
Through yourself, convener. Yes, I've just got the data for Ayres in front of me, Councillor Murtagh. The location that we were looking at, there has obviously been a reduction in speeds of that of 3 miles an hour. So we've got to a mean speed of 26.1. It's not quite the magic number of 25 yet. So yes, we would certainly look at reducing potentially in Ayres, dependent on what we can look at and moving forward in speed reduction measures.
Thank you, convener.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. I wonder if officers could maybe just highlight what discussions there's been with Police Scotland so far.
Through yourself, convener. So at the moment in time, Councillor Nimmo, obviously this has been a national strategy. I'm just trying to find it. And in the report in 7.8, Police Scotland have confirmed we sit on various boards with Police Scotland. We sit on a local partnership with them. We sit on a Scots TARS group, which stands for Traffic and Road Safety, and they have confirmed what is in 7.8 of the report, and I'm happy to read that out. So Police Scotland have confirmed previously that their enforcement of speed limits aligns with the enforcement activity criteria contained within their speeding standard operating procedure, which states deployment of resources must prioritise sites which represent the greatest risk and should only be undertaken where considered necessary and in the interests of casualty reduction. So in terms of that, you probably remember I noted a lot at the March 2024 committee about being self-enforcement, and just as I stated to Councillor Murtagh there, Councillor Nimmo, if these areas aren't compliant and we can't do it in a reasonable economic state in terms of finances, the potential is that some areas would revert to 30 mile an hour. We need to make sure that using our engineering judgment and the criteria that we have, that the roads that we are changing to 20 mile an hour permanently are appropriate.
Don't get me wrong, it is a great idea to have 20 mile an hour speed limits, but obviously it comes down to resources at the end of the day. And Police Scotland are suffering just like everybody else for the lack of resources. They really struggle to enforce the current 30 mile an hour limit. What makes you think that they're going to be able to do any better with a 20?
Through yourself, convener, I think that comes down to what I was noting to Councillor Murtagh, in the sense that roads have been designed for the 85th percentile. Regardless of what we do in roads, Councillor Nimmo, there will be people that speed, and I think that is a difficulty that we have. We need to make that decision of whether what is appropriate on these roads, whether that road is appropriate to be changed to 20 mile an hour permanently, or it is stuck at 20 mile an hour, 30, sorry. I think it's a difficulty that we have in terms of enforcement. I can't answer that question. It's Police Scotland, obviously, but we will try and look at areas, like I stated in March last year, as if we can look at this 20 mile an hour aligning with our active travel strategy. So can we add a cycleway in there that would reduce the carriageway lane widths? Can we add in blue-green infrastructure that will, one, improve surface water drainage, but two, potentially also reduce the speeds? We are looking at every single area that we could potentially do in these areas that are appropriate to reduce the mean speeds. But you're absolutely right that there will be areas where potentially, like we spoke about earlier, we'll need to reduce and we'll need to change the kind of areas as such.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. And firstly, I would state I'm pleased to see a report will be coming back. I'd draw your attention to 3.2 on page 16, and there's a sentence there. It is anticipated there would be an overall net reduction in carbon emissions due to the reduction in collisions, due to the reduction in emergency service vehicles. Do you think this will make a great deal of the carbon emissions and the car usage? There has been a debate in the Scottish Parliament this week where they have stated they won't meet their target figures. Do we have target figures, and do we have any data to back this up, that the reduction in accidents will have a great effect on our emissions?
Through yourself, Convener, I don't have data to hand, Councillor Spears. It's been something that we've anecdotally discussed at the forums I was mentioning to Councillor Nimmo there. We've obviously have a climate change team within the council. We have had discussions with them, but also nationally, Transport Scotland are involved, and they have a climate change assessment team as such. And it's been something that we've anecdotally spoke about in these forums, that reducing the amount of collisions would reduce emergency services, would reduce, overall net carbon reduction for these collisions as such. So if we can improve the road safety in Falkirk Council, my personal belief is yes, we would reduce these carbon emissions. To what extent, I don't know, fortunately.
So we have no data. All we have is a discussion at some group. So we're printing this stuff off, but we have nothing to back it up.
Through yourself, Convener, it's not data that I am aware of is held nationally, Councillor Spears, not just in Falkirk Council. I don't think there's anybody that takes, but we could potentially look at a carbon calculator for collisions. It's not something I'm aware of that we have either locally or nationally.
Well, there's a lot of words like hopefully and anticipated, and these words that, what do they really mean? Are we living in constant hope or anticipation?
Councillor Spears, I think the officer's answered your question. If you've got any further questions, that's fine, but if not, we'll move on.
I think he's gave a response. I don't think there's an answer.
But he's answered your question as best of his ability. So I think we can move on. But any other questions? Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. First question I had was 5.16, saying Transport Scotland provides a road safety improvement fund grant to local authorities. The council was granted £250,000 which was used for the Snabbrae project. It's anticipated at present the Falkirk Council will be granted circa £309,000 for this year coming. This will allow internal road safety budget currently earmarked for Snabbrae to be utilised on other road safety projects. What projects do you think this could be used on?
Through yourself, convener. Potentially, Councillor Redmond, we could utilise that for schools roads review side of things. We'd obviously earmarked £200,000 that initially came from a road services, roads maintenance budget, but we are looking at that in terms of what road safety projects we have. We've obviously just reprioritised the road safety programme, so we are looking at different schemes. That there's various there in the appendices that show the kind of top priority road safety schemes at this moment in time, as well as obviously the schools roads review, which is highlighted. So potentially those, I wouldn't like to stick my head above the parapet and state an exact location at this moment in time, but there is locations within the road safety plan and the appendix of the road safety plan report, as well as potentially the schools road safety aspect as well.
Thank you. I'll look into that further. That's interesting. The other question I had was, young drivers between 17 to 25 are most likely to become a casualty on the roads. What actions can be taken or will be taken as part of this plan to tackle that?
Through yourself, convener. So within the section 7.2.1 of the road safety plan, Councillor Redmond, we have a number of initiatives that we've looked at. The state of the road user on the left hand side, so the young car drivers, 17 to 25 years old, other areas like cyclists, 36 to 55, and other areas like pedestrians. And within that, we have a whole host of initiatives. So working with Police Scotland, Safety Cameras Scotland, I think the big one for me personally would be the increased awareness. So we've already started, or we're starting discussions next week with our education colleagues, and I think awareness is massive of that. There are obviously there's other initiatives such as the black box that I know that a lot of young car drivers can use, but there's a lot of free online classroom resources. I think education for me has to be a massive aspect of how we improve our road safety in Falkirk Council.
Thank you.
It's just, James, could you maybe put your microphone up? We're getting a wee bit of feedback, but I've got your name. Okay. I noticed Mr. Reid, you wanted to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, convener. Just to say, Councillor Redmond, we also participate in Central Safe Drive Stay Alive road education campaign, and this year there were 1,400 pupils across the majority of our schools attended that. That's an annual thing, so all senior phase pupils will have the opportunity to attend that as well. It's a really hard-hitting, effective campaign designed to just address some of the issues that are being talked about today.
Thanks. I think thank you for that. The responses. That's education is going to be key to this probably. Just a couple more questions left, and this is probably a harder question, but fatalities have increased recently. Unfortunately, this year with the highest number of fatalities over the period, with 7 people losing their lives. Will this road safety plan reduce the number of fatalities on Falkirk roads?
Through yourself, convener, that is the hope. I don't want to use the word hope any more than I need to, but 100, we can. There's only certain areas that we have a remit for as such, Councillor Redmond, and if I can find the area in the road safety plan, there is a number of contributory factors that has affected a lot of collisions in the council area, and give me 2 wee seconds, I can find that. So on in page 23 of Appendix A, there is 6 top-ranked road safety factors that are contributory factors that Police Scotland, when they have attended collisions, have noted as being the top. And a lot of these are ineffective observation by the driver, road rider being aggressive, rider travelling too fast. There is a lot of areas where the council, we can't unfortunately affect. We will do as much as we can to affect that. But as I said to Councillor Nimmo, there'll be people that speed regardless of how we create the road geometry that we create, unfortunately. So my hope is that, yes, it will reduce, but what I will say is that I can assure you that, you know, that we'll, as a council, do our utmost to confirm these initiatives and try and improve road safety within our remit as much as we can.
Thanks, really appreciate that response. And you know, it's obviously there's a lot of different stakeholders involved in the road as the council's plan, but we're working with other parties. This will be my very last question. But it was saying that, I've lost my reference, but it said fatal and serious collisions have an average cost of around £321,000. You know, who pays for this cost, and is that a cost to the council, £320,000? It seems very high, but answer that, please.
Through yourself, convener, it's not the council that pays that, Councillor Redmond. It's a number of aspects, including emergency service, insurance providers, NHS when people attend hospital for certain aspects. The only minor aspect that we attend is if there's a fatal investigation, either myself or our network coordinator attend that with Police Scotland, and we look at the investigations and determining what the road safety contributory factors are. So we attend site with Police Scotland after a fatality, and we discuss, is the correct signage in place, is the carriageway in a fair condition, is the lining fit for purpose, should that pedestrian island be there, and that attendance of site is our only real involvement after collisions, obviously without going through these for analysis. But in terms of the figure to itself, it involves a number, mainly NHS, emergency services and insurance.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the answers. That's all my questions.
Thank you. And Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, convener. One of the reasons why the rollout of 20 miles per hour at Airth was a success was that there was community buy-in before it was rolled out. Do we have any evidence that the local communities in the areas where 20 miles per hour is going to be rolled out under this scheme will support such measures?
Through yourself, convener. So what we had done, Councillor Bundy, in terms of prior, we'd carried out a full survey at Airth. Obviously, like you're saying, there was community buy-in there. There was a high percentage of people that thought it was a positive road safety scheme, or scheme as such. At this moment in time, I'm unsure of all settlements. Obviously, we've got 48 or 49 settlements in Falkirk Council. I can't give you a definitive answer on whether everybody's in for it or not. But we would look to consult with the members of the public prior to going out. You know, we carried out public engagement at Allendale, Fankerton and Stonywood. We carried that out at Denny High in person and also on Teams. What I will say is that there was a pretty low response rate, but overall at Allendale, Fankerton and Stonywood, there was a fair percentage of members of the people of these communities that did want 20 mile an hour. There will always be people who perhaps don't for whatever reason, but the areas that we have consulted with so far has been positive, including here.
Thank you for that answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to determine the way forward, are people content with the consolidated amendment now becoming the motion?
It was just one question I had, so it's been kind of a wee bit last minute. So my point 5 was notes our general safety concern with regards to the lack of enforcement for the new 20 mile an hour zones, and I don't feel as though that's been quite included in the new amendment. Could we incorporate that?
I think that was intended in the report. Also updated an engagement with Police Scotland and Safety Camera Partnership regarding any potential enforcement of 20 mile an hour zones, police patrols for near street infrastructure, etc. I think that would be also part of the report that comes back.
I think it would be possible just to take a quick 5 minutes just to kind of quickly discuss. I appreciate our time, but just to make sure the group's all happy with.
Yeah, I think we can take a short break there.
Cheers, thank you.
Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm content from my point of view with the amalgamated amendment, and not to put you on the spot, convener, but I think it would be good if we did have a consolidated amendment if it's moved by the administration, perhaps either myself, Councillor Redmond, or someone would be happy to second, perhaps, and that would show a good spirit of collaboration, I think, if you consider that.
Just be mindful that seconding is only technically seconding because there's no debate.
Yes,
so-
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have a particular issue with that. Okay, about 5-10 minutes. Okay, colleagues, can we come back into session, please? Councillor Redmond.
Thanks, Rob. After consulting with the group, I'm not 100% positive about that, but we're happy to accept the way that it's proposed. We would have liked a wee bit of the stronger wording, but we're mindful it's coming back to scrutiny and it can be dealt with there. So thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Redmond. Okay, we'll then go to Councillor Garner to move the report.
Thank you for that, and thanks to Jack and Laura and the movers of their amendments. It's good to have a bit of collaboration every now and again. Thank you, convener, and thanks to officers for the members' briefing prior to this, and indeed the report that they brought before us. David and Gary, you would need a memory like Rain Man, and with all the questions and interesting information contained in this report. As we have heard, this report is about a desire to reduce the incidents and prevent fatalities or serious collisions on the network and consequently reduce the impacts of each. The new road safety prioritisation methods plan to provide a more proactive approach in the area, aligning more to the safe system approach in the national framework. At the council budget meeting on the 6th of March 2025, you will note it was confirmed that 200k of capital funding would go to schools road safety engineering design, and has commenced discussions with colleagues in Children's Services to look at what can be done against our prioritisation register. Falkirk Council's Road Safety Plan 25-2030 aligns with Transport Scotland's road safety framework, aiming to reduce serious and fatal road incidents by 2030 and achieve greater reductions by 2050. The plan supports national targets and provides local accident analysis and trends. Falkirk Council currently oversees an adopted road network of 993 kilometres, which expands annually with the adoption of new development sites between 2013 and 2024. There were just over 1,700 reported personal injury collisions, resulting in almost 2,200 casualties in the Falkirk Council area over this period. There has been a significant decrease in the total collision frequency. The number of injury collisions more than half, from 232 in 2013 to 272 in 2024. 72, sorry, in 2024. Key challenges moving forward include the disproportionate representation of young drivers, which we've heard about, motorcyclists and casualties, frequent collisions on single carriageways and high pedestrian casualties in specific age groups. Future initiatives include regular inspections, communication strategies, classroom teaching, which I think is very important, and promoting active travel, which is also very important. Historically, Falkirk Council, along with most other local authorities, used accident cluster data to inform road safety priorities, now aligning with the Safe Systems approach of Transport Scotland. Traffic survey data and local knowledge is now also used, which allows for the provision of a more proactive approach holistically across the full council boundary. Furthermore, the Schools Road Safety Review, as I said, has a £200,000 budget, which will increase safety around the schools, hopefully a great deal. The report also outlines current road safety budgets, including annual rolling programme, as well as individual budgets for larger schemes, such as Champney and Snabbury. In conclusion, Falkirk Council is fulfilling its statutory duties by prioritising road safety schemes and seeking approval for the new Road Safety Plan 25-30 and its inclusions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Carter.
I would be happy to formally second. Thanks, convener.
Thank you. As that has been moved and seconded as a motion, there's no debate, but there's an opportunity for others to see why they are supporting. So, Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. I agree with Councillor Garner. Obviously, it's good to have a bit of collaboration. Firstly, as well, and thanks to Mr McGregor and his team for a very detailed and structured report. We're welcoming the development of the Road Safety Plan for 25 to 2030 in its alignment with the National Safe Programme. We believe it's essential that the strategy is strengthened by the addition of our amendment that's going to come back for scrutiny. So think that was really important and welcome that's happened. Obviously, the reason for us bringing forward the amendment was for Allendale. Constituents raised serious concerns about the 20 mile an hour limit regularly being ignored. Even more worryingly, they report lower speeds. The lower speed limit has led to dangerous overtaking. So we just thought that bringing that forward was important. So I'll not go into too much because it's just a thing about that. Welcome the collaboration today.
Thank you. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, convener. Everybody else, I thank Gary. As elected members know, Gary and his team and David and all the team have any issues, they deal with them. I think identifying areas of concerns through the district is essential. With regards to the one in my area, the Cadgers Bray realignment has made a dramatic improvement to the road users in that area. And if we keep identifying areas like that and bringing new alternatives forward, I think it'll help in the what we're trying to achieve. So just thank Gary, David and the team for everything that they've done so far. Thanks.
Thank you, Bailey Kerr. Councillor Spears.
Yeah, we welcome this report. We'll come back, especially coming back to scrutiny, especially to see how the 20 mile per hour speed limit will be carried out.
Okay, thank you. And therefore, we're all agreed on the report as amended. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 6 is pavement parking implementation. There's now an opportunity for members to ask questions, but as there is no amendments and there would be no debate on this, so just to remind members of that, if there are any questions in relation to pavement parking. I would just very quickly start off with asking about a potential appeal process whereby residents don't necessarily agree with the assessment that's been carried out. And just wondered if you maybe say a wee bit about how that might be able to be shared with our communities and indeed allow that challenge to come from the assessment process.
Thanks, convener. So at this moment in time, convener, there's not a formal appeals process. So what we have is, as set out in the report and Appendix 1 of the report, there's a full assessment of the streets in Falkirk. And what we have also done is highlighted how we're going to assess these in the future. So obviously we're fully aware that just like WL lines, when they were implemented decades ago, that this is potentially a moving picture. It's always going to be fluid and we need to make sure that we are on the ball with that. So in terms of moving forward, we will take requests for assessment and we will assess those at that time. Obviously, the majority of the report was carried out through visits and desktop studies, whereas there were some areas that were highlighted to us through a request. So what we did was we fully assessed all the streets in Falkirk Council, but what we also did was we asked members of the public to email us in with areas that they felt should be considered for exemption and or mitigation. And we have, we understand that the majority of pavement parking probably happens after people finish their work at 5 o'clock in the evening to night time, through the night. So we have taken that into consideration. We've carried out nighttime surveys of some of these areas, and that is how we will move forward alongside within the report, just find it, sorry, section 5.6. So obviously we're hoping to commence enforcement of pavement parking on the 18th of August 2025. All going well and this report being approved this morning. And up until that, we are happy to look at requests for exemptions in terms of the criteria that we have provided from Transport Scotland. That's also highlighted in the report. But a lot of local authorities have taken this slightly differently. There's slight differences that people have taken on it. What I would highlight is that there is some local authorities in Scotland that have 0 exemptions, and they have commenced enforcement. Edinburgh, for instance, commenced enforcement in January 2024. There's other local authorities that commenced enforcement this year. So in terms of appeals, to answer your question fully again, there's not an appeals process at this moment in time, and formal appeals process. However, we are happy to take requests to assess these moving forward, and we will do so at that time, because I'm fully aware that developments can occur, you know, areas can be knocked down, things can happen that can change the situation of these areas, and we're happy to continually assess these areas. But at this moment in time, the 21 streets in the appendix of the report are the areas that are going to be considered for an exemption and or mitigation at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you for that, Gary. I appreciate it. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I've got 4 questions, but these questions will not be new to you, as we were also broached at the briefing meeting. Is this a 2-tier system, or are all streets included?
Through yourself, convener, it's not a 2-tier system as such. Councillor Spears, all streets, all 2,366 streets in Falkirk Council have been assessed through the exact same criteria that's stated within the report.
You, as previously stated, there's 997 kilometres of roads. How many kilometres of pavements is there?
Yeah, about 1,200 kilometres.
1,200 kilometres. Now, where we have drop pavements and the problems of double parking, how will we include that?
Sorry, can you repeat that question, Councillor Spears?
Where we have dropped pavements, you know, we have many of them in the district, and people have white lines in front of them, people have disabled parking spaces. How are we going to deal with the double parking problem surrounding them?
Through yourself, convener, thanks again for asking that again, Councillor Spears. So that is included within the legislation. Double parking is included, and that will be enforced as is. So obviously, if there is a drop curb and as a provision for a crossing area, this is an area that will have enforcement on that. There will be a penalty charge notice issued if there is that double parking or a parking across a drop curb.
Thirdly, in agreement with collaborative working, are you working collaboratively with the refuse service? We have in some streets especially problems on bin collection day where people can't get past their bins, especially some of the narrower streets in Grangemouth where people are putting the bins to get past in people's driveways, and the refuse section is not uplifting the bin because it's not on the pavement. So are we allowing people to put bins on pavement?
Through yourself, convener, and answer to your first point, Councillor Spears, yes, there was a full consultation carried out with our waste service. Obviously, our waste colleagues sit within environment and operations within place, very close to us. We carried out full consultation with them, discussing with the refuse vehicles, and where there has been areas which have had difficulties picking up their bins on bin day. And moving forward, we will continue that collaboration with waste to ensure that the pavements are as clear as they can be. Obviously, there is areas where the waste service can't go well into people's driveways. However, we will continue working with our waste colleagues on that, and if there is areas that we can make minor adjustments, we will do so.
Okay, just for clarity, people can then leave their bins in their driveways?
I would need to ask our waste colleagues on that, Councillor Spears.
Well, I'm looking for the collaboration here. People are going to block the pavement, and the whole reason for this is to have clear pavements, but especially women with children and buggies and people in wheelchairs can get past. But if there's bins in the way and we're not going to lift them at the end of somebody's driveway, then we need to be crystal clear here for the public. Because
Councillor Spears, I think you've had your answer from roads. It's a matter for waste. we stand present today and they're not part of this report. So perhaps you might want to redirect your inquiry to them.
Well, due respect, convener, the report is to have clear pavements and walkways.
It's about pavement parking. It's not about bins. It's about pavement parking. That's
So
what the
it's
report is.
it's not about clear walk.
Okay, I'll move on. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, convener. I would just say just a couple of finer points. I think that most of the constituents of the Upper Braes absolutely welcome this. Pavement parking is a massive issue for men and women with buggies and for accessibility. I think though, you know, specifically, and I know other areas are the same, but certainly in the Upper Braes, our roads were never designed for anything more than kind of single-use cars, certainly not for multiple car households. What we do have in the Upper Braes, so is we do have, and I say this carefully, but we do have green space that would give us scope to create safer parking areas. I realise that there's a huge financial commitment if you were to try and use scrublands and create it as parking. I wonder if you would be able to give a suggestion of what scope do we have to create safer parking, or what kind of financial commitment would you need from the council to be able to fulfil that?
Okay, Gary.
Yeah, through yourself, convener. So as a difficult one, Councillor Patterson, we are fully understanding, you know, a lot of the team have a lot of local knowledge of the area, and we are aware that a lot of these streets were not designed for the amount of cars that they now hold. So that is one of these areas where, in terms of the legislation, it allows us to look at exemptions, but what it also allows us to do is look at mitigations. So we potentially would look at that. I'm aware that there's a parking strategy coming up to executive in September, and potentially as an output of that, we would look at areas where we may need to mitigate, and what that mitigation looks like this moment in time. It could be parking areas. There's a number of areas throughout the council that we have been notified that there is the demand is well and over and above the supply. So that is potentially something that could come out of the output of the parking strategy, alongside the output of the mitigation for these pavement parking assessments. In terms of, sorry, just to further add to that, in terms of financial commitment at this moment in time, Councillor Patterson, it's an unknown.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and I look forward to the discussion in September, because I think that is somewhere that we could make big improvements. Can I just ask briefly as well then, in terms of, you know, this is going to be an adjustment period whilst people, if this is introduced, you know, it is going to be an adjustment for a lot of people. I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of people who will adhere to it and a lot of people who won't. What scope do we have for the public reporting if they see repeat offenders in their area? Is there a streamlined process? Like, will we have an option to have an online report in or anonymous report in to make it easier for members of the public to give us their local knowledge?
Through yourself, convener. So, Councillor Patterson, what we've obviously already commenced a soft approach, as it were, issuing advisory notices to members of the public. And what we have seen is, already we have seen a behaviour change in a lot of areas. We have seen areas where there was parking on the footways and there are now fully parking on the carriageways, and this hasn't caused a problem. What we're going to do moving forward, if this report is approved, is create a full communication strategy with our comms team so that members of the public are fully aware of the areas that are exempt. There are a number of local authorities that have a GIS mapping system on their website that shows the areas that are exempt. So the default is that no areas are exempt, and any areas that would be exempt would have full lining and signing and a traffic regulation order to ensure that people are aware of these areas, that they are exempt to footway parking. Another area that I touched on at one of the members' briefings is that we have a pavement parking FAQs page on the website that has a parking website at the bottom of it that members of the public can email in about requesting for exemptions as well as requests for enforcement.
Nice. That I appreciate that. I welcome that, and I would fully agree. Yeah, in the areas where you have sent out advisory notices, there have been really positive behaviour change. So I welcome all of that. And then just finally, it's loosely on this topic, but somewhat refers to our last one about road safety. Given that we're going to be taking on extra parking attendants, and I know that there's a lot of ground to cover, and you'll be increasing that to evenings and weekends as well, which again is welcome. Would you then also be able to direct those parking attendants to more of the schools around pick up and drop off times? Because I know that in terms of road safety, it's, you know, it's obviously a flashpoint at schools around pick up and drop off. So would we be able to extend more inspections around those times as well?
Through yourself, convener, potentially, Councillor Patterson, at this moment in time, we have looked at other local authorities that have commenced the enforcement of pavement parking. We have looked at their number of staff, and we have carried out engineering judgment to the best of our abilities to come up with the 2 additional temporary staff on a kind of back shift rota to enforce this. As I stated earlier, it's obviously going to be a lot of times is going to be after work through the night. So potentially against those staff rotas, we would look at what could be done around schools. I think that's potentially a quick win that could also come out of the schools roads review as well. Like I said, we've got a meeting with our education colleagues next week, where areas like this can be discussed. However, you know, with 6 current partner attendants and 59 schools throughout Scotland, it is always going to be a difficulty of enforcement in and around schools, but it is something we're certainly aware of and will continue to have consideration for moving forward.
No, I appreciate that, and I obviously, with the extra money that went in the budget to the school roads review, I really look forward to that report coming in as well. And I don't think anyone would disagree that we need more enforcement around schools at those times. So I really look forward to seeing progress on that as well. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, convener. It's another question in regarding to the schools, because when you see, particularly when they're being picked up in the afternoon, parents waiting in the cars. I'm thinking about St Francis in my own ward, where both sides of the road, they're parking on the pavements, but parents are in the vehicle waiting. In that context, would these new powers be applied, or would it not be classified as parking because they're in the vehicle with the engine still running?
Through yourself, convener, that would be deemed enforceable, Councillor Bundy. But what we are doing is looking at specific areas like that through the schools roads review. So we are looking at areas, how we can improve areas. Can we bring in pilots that would perhaps reduce that parking on the footways? Because we're obviously aware that enforcement can happen. You know, we can't have our partner attendants at every single school at 3:15 or at 8:45 in the morning. So we are looking at a lot of areas, how we can improve different schools, and that is our big talking point of our meeting with education next week.
Is there a situation where the system's overwhelmed with complaints because other parents are continually reporting, and then the answer is we have these powers, but we don't have the resources to implement them, and that may actually undermine trust?
Through yourself, convener, I think there's always a risk of resource, Councillor Bundy. However, I'm hoping that through the work that we've done already in terms of assessing it, moving forward with our schools road safety approach, that would mitigate a lot of these. You know, the last thing I want to do is give our staff certainly a more workload. You know, we've a couple of years since I returned to the council, we've carried out 20-mile-an-hour implementation, pavement parking legislation, schools roads review, new road safety plan, all on top of the staff's daily workload. So that last thing I would want to do is give our staff any more work at this moment in time. It's always a risk, and it's highlighted in the report. However, we would hope that through the mitigation that we are looking at in terms of our schools road safety, our assessments and mitigation for pavement parking, that has mitigated as much as it can be. Yep.
Thanks for those answers.
Okay, thank you. Bailey Kerr. Councillor Nick Murtagh next.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything from Bailey Care there. I wasn't sure what was. Okay. Is it myself? Okay. Thanks, convener. So, I mean, first of all, it's a really comprehensive report, and I really thank officers for the level of detail in it and the efforts have gone in over this time. I just want to clarify, if you can answer the question about one area that kind of often comes up. We're talking obviously about the pavement parking legislation that came in, but where that's an issue for Falkirk Council or for councils and decriminalised parking, can you just clarify that it is still the case that Police Scotland have responsibilities for enforcing of dangerous parking? So for whether it's on the pavement or not, but there could be instances where you have pavement parking and actually that's causing a danger to the public, and that's still enforceable by Police Scotland under the road traffic situation laws. Thank you.
Through yourself, convener. In short, Councillor Murtagh, yes, Police Scotland have still got enforcement powers and responsibilities in terms of dangerous parking, abandoned cars, obstructions. So absolutely yes.
Okay, and I think it's important. Therefore, I mean, I presume there will be collaboration between the two. I don't know if you're having discussions with Police Scotland, but there's through the whole decriminalisation of parking in general, there has been tension about this idea of that's the council's responsibility, this is the police's responsibility, neither the twain shall meet. But will you have discussions with Police Scotland about the fact that that does remain their responsibility? And for example, we talked about patrols around schools. It can be that police are looking at various criminal aspects of parking and other infringements around schools. If they find dangerous parking, they can book. They can issue notices regardless of whether there's a parking attendant. You'd have maybe discussions with them about that kind of thing.
Through yourself, convener. Yes, Councillor Murtagh, in short. So we have various forums that obviously we connect with Police Scotland, but we've also got direct dialogue with Police Scotland. We obviously obtain their Stats 19 data for our road safety, accident collision statistics, and we do have dialogue. I'll probably not say daily, but we have a very fairly common dialogue with Police Scotland to discuss various aspects of the road, as well as being involved with in Police Scotland on some of these forums that we sit on nationally.
Thank you. That's good to know. It's always important to have a team approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Bailey Kenny and I've got Councillor Redmond.
Thanks, convener. Probably leading on for that was going to be my initial question, leading on for Councillor Murtagh with regards to the communication, when we're putting the communication out for the areas that we are going to implement. The residents didn't know who to contact, whether it's the council or the police, because they didn't understand what a dangerous parking is and what's not a dangerous parking. So getting the communication right for our residents, I think, will be key. Will that be part of the communication, Gary?
Through yourself, convener. It was certainly something, as I was writing that down, it sounded like a sensible approach, Councillor Kerr. So it's something that we've had quite a lot, not just recently, but throughout the years, is that a lot of people aren't aware whose responsibility a lot of these things are, and it happens in the flooding aspect as well. You know, there's Scottish Water, there's SEPA, there's ourselves, there's marine bodies as well. So we'll certainly include that, and as I wrote that down, it certainly sounded a sensible approach. So we'll certainly include that moving forward.
Thank you very much. I mentioned that at the briefing. I just want to mention here, and I know it'll be probably nothing we could do straight away, but could we look at our janitorial members being able to enforce penalties? I know there need to be discussions with job description, unions. I know that, but I'm sure if you asked every janitor in all the local schools, would they like to help and make it possible? And I think it'd only need to happen once or twice, where one of the janitors issues a ticket and it was stopped. And I know it's maybe a long way off, but would you consider that in a long term, maybe after consultation with education and HR?
Through yourself, convener, I think, like you've just stated there, Councillor Kerr, that there's a lot of issues that surrounds that. It's certainly something that we can look at, as I stated in the members' briefing. However, there's a lot of HR issues, there's the unions be involved, there's a lot of aspects of people's jobs that are involved. But it's certainly something that I can include in the discussion with education next week to see how we could, if we could take that forward and consider that. I'm unsure at this moment in time whether that is a route that we could go down, but I can certainly include that in discussions.
Thanks, Gary. With regards to the areas where they're going to, the pavement parking's got to be implemented, once again regarding communication, the communication of the areas where we are implementing it will be key, because as Councillor Spears alluded to, firstly, people will think it's a two-tier situation. So will we have the evidence and the data to get back to these residents whose streets will be implemented? Because round the corner, their neighbour maybe no be. So will we have the data to say they're the reasons why your street's been highlighted, and that's why their street isn't?
Through yourself, convener, in short, to answer your question, Councillor Kerr, yes. So we have had the ability to create exemptions against the pavement parking legislation from December 2023. And what we have done, in my personal belief, is that we've carried out a full assessment of all the streets in Falkirk. There was a number of local authorities that haven't carried out assessments of their streets prior to enforcement, and there was other areas obviously where there is zero exemption. So I believe that the assessment that you have before you today and within the report, the appendix of the report, is the full bulletproof data that shows this is why one street has an exemption and this is why another street doesn't. That there was criteria obviously noted from Transport Scotland within the legislation that allows us for exemptions. We have to obviously be mindful that the spirit of legislation is that people don't park on pavements, on footways, or double park or park over drop curbs. The spirit of legislation is for disabled users, single parents or grandparents with prams to get past the road, like Councillor Spears alluded to earlier with the bins. And that's what this legislation is for. I'm fully aware that there'll be areas where people are not going to be able to park right outside their house anymore. And we've looked at that in detail when we went through this assessment. So go back and answer your question, yes, all the data is there. The full process is highlighted in pages 22 and 23 of the Appendix A, and we have all the data internally that states what street went out at what stage and why we've got to the exemptions.
Thanks, Gary, because that's great that we've got this data, and as soon as it's implemented, people will be notified, will be elected members. So having that data is valuable for us, so we can say, well, that's the reason why your street's been put up for implementation. My next question is, with regard, you mentioned it there about prams, buggies, wheelchairs. When does it become a matter for the police and no the council wardens? Because if it's on a street where they can't get by with a wheelchair or a pram, whose responsibility does that fall under?
Through yourself, convener. So, in terms of legislation, Councillor Kerr, we obviously have decriminalised parking enforcement powers. Our partner attendants are able to issue penalty charge notices to anybody parking in contravention of this legislation. Similar to my answer to Councillor Murtagh, Police Scotland still have powers in terms of areas when it's dangerous parking, abandoned cars, and such. And if there was areas, I would like to hope that if someone was parking in contravention of this legislation 7 days a week and they were receiving £700 fines a week, I would like to hope that would perhaps remove the need for us to do anything further. But we could then, like I stated to Councillor Murtagh, work with Police Scotland and determine what the best route forward for any of these areas is.
Right. Thanks, Gary. My last question, it was mentioned with two previous elected members. With regards to the schools, I know I've had you at a couple of schools and great advice. I know there's a report coming back. Can you tell us when approximately that report will come back to elected members for your recommendations?
Through yourself, convener, I'm not aware of a report coming back for the schools road safety review. Councillor Kerr, what I am aware of that we considered internally was a briefing note to all local members on the prioritisation and how we were going to take forward the budget that we had this financial year for that, but it didn't include a report.
So we've done an analysis of every school. Is that correct? There
Yes.
isn't a report coming back at the end of that, the findings.
For yourself, convener, no, there was nothing ever confirmed for a further report coming back on schools road safety.
Okay, that's something I maybe take outside this meeting. Thank you very much, Gary.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. A lot of my questions have been asked already, but I'll start with following on for Councillor Patterson's point. Going to take on an additional 2 parking wardens. How many parking wardens do we currently have, and with the 2, what will that take us up to?
Through yourself, convener. So currently, to date, Councillor Redmond, we have 6 partner attendants, 5 are full-time and 1 is part-time, and that would then take us to 6 partner attendants. 8 partner attendants altogether.
Thanks. So in terms of costs, obviously we've got partner attendants, and then there's a lot of mitigation measures as well involved in some of the streets that it's been implemented on. How much do you think this implementation is going to cost overall?
Through yourself, convener, at this moment in time, Councillor Redmond, we have considered all the streets for Falkirk Council, and we have considered the 21 streets in the appendix of the report that are going to be considered for exemption and or mitigation. We have not looked into further detail of what that could look like. However, it's likely that would include things like lining and signing, which aren't a massive amount of money, but it also could include things like trial pits to ensure the construction of the footway is suitable for people parking on it. At this moment in time, we are hoping that it's not a lot of money overall, and we have, in discussions anecdotally with other local authorities, noted that they haven't spent a lot of money on their exemptions either. Signing and lining is still pretty cheap in terms of overall civil engineering measures. So I can't give you a detailed figure at this moment in time. As I stated earlier to Councillor Meikle-John, the likelihood is that this is always going to be a moving picture as well. So there is potential after new developments in areas where demolished and refurbished and renovated that this could continue. So unfortunately, I can't give you a detail definitive on that, but we can certainly look at that and provide that in the future.
Thanks, Gary. I look forward to seeing that. What penalties could be issued to people who don't who park in pavements going forward within the restricted zones?
So through yourself, convener, so similar to penalty charge notices that we are able to enforce at the moment, Councillor Redmond, it's a £100 fine, and that's reduced to £50 if paid within 14 days.
And just my last question, it's a kind of broader point, but maybe be good to kind of air it publicly. But what do you feel the benefits of this will be to people in Falkirk?
Through yourself, convener. So the benefits in terms of the legislation, I spoke a wee bit earlier about the spirit of the legislation, Councillor Redmond, and this legislation and us enforcing this legislation will allow non-motorised users, disabled users, people with prams and buggies and wheelchairs, the ability to get around the streets with the aim that it's a lot easier now than it ever was. The spirit of this legislation, as I stated earlier, is to allow that as an active travel area where people can walk and wheel and cycle on their pavements using their buggies and their prams and their wheelchairs. At the end of the day, these footways and pavements have been constructed and designed to take this type of traffic rather than vehicles. So a certain benefit and an aim is that people with certain disabilities, like the blind and people in wheelchairs, as well as parents and grandparents walking buggies, will be able to get around the Falkirk Council area a lot better.
Thanks, Gary. That's all my questions.
Thank you, and I think that's a good point to end on. I appreciate you've got your light on, Councillor Spears, but you have had your opportunity for questions.
Well,
you will get an opportunity because there's no amendment, therefore there's no debate.
I did say 4 questions.
I'm sorry, Councillor Spears, I'm moving on.
Remember, I'm not in a political party. We're allowed to ask questions.
But you had your opportunity, Councillor Spears. I'm going to very briefly say that from my own perspective, it's really nice to see this actually come to fruition. I sat on one of the working groups to develop this legislation way back 2016-17, and it was not without its trials and tribulations, but through the Mobility and Access Committee for Scotland, who specifically looks at access for those with disabilities and impairments, to see this actually come to fruition and actively improve accessibility is really good to see. But I'll go now to Councillor Garner to move the report.
Thank you, convener. And again, thanks to David, Gary and the team for the briefing, the report and answering the many pertinent questions that have been brought before us from members. It is an important report. This is something we've been pushing for some time, and I'm happy to see it now being implemented. I think we've learned from the success from other councils and we've moved forward with that. Part 6 of the Transport Scotland Act 2019 makes it illegal to park in pavements, double park or park across pedestrian drop curb crossing points. Exceptions to this legislation include vehicles used for emergency services, roadworks, waste collection, urgent health care and short-term deliveries, provided they do not exceed a continuous period of 20 minutes. Exemption orders require the installation of signage, delineation of parking bays and possibly widened footways to ensure 1.5 metres of pedestrian space remains unobstructed. I fully support Falkirk Council's approach, currently considering 21 streets for exemptions. Though this may change with future developments, future exemption requests will be treated on a case-by-case basis using the criteria laid out in this report, and all exemptions will be shown on a public-facing interactive map on the Falkirk Council website once confirmed. In October 2023, the Council adopted a soft approach to promote behaviour change before enforcement, issuing advisory notices, train staff and prepare for future enforcement. Project Centre Limited was commissioned to conduct a pavement parking assessment, surveying all 2.3 kilometres of public roads in the Council area. The assessment identified current pavement parking and potential displacement areas, with recommendations including exemptions, advisory bays, traffic regulation orders and footway reconstruction. The potential income from enforcement is currently unknown, as other local authorities have seen initial peaks followed by drops due to behaviour changes, similar to what happened with us with WA Lines, but that is what we want. Falkirk Council has one vacant parking attendant post, which will be used for a temporary 12-month role, and is proposing a second temporary role to allow for creating a back shift rota. Among other local authorities, 16 out of the 32 are currently enforcing pavement parking, with 3 more, including Falkirk Council, planning to do so in the future. Some councils like Edinburgh and Perth and Kinross have no exemptions, while others such as Aberdeen City and Dundee City have 20 and 30 exemptions respectively. In conclusion, Falkirk Council is seeking approval to implement pavement parking legislation and commence enforcement on the 18th of August 2025. Officers have employed a thorough methodology to analyse and assess roads and meet recognised criteria for exemption consideration. Future exemption requests will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, as said, using the criteria outlined in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, happy to formally second.
Thank you. Now go, as there's no amendment, I'll just go to others to see why they are in support.
Just like to kind of echo the points that's been made. Quite often we have people frustrated with parking in their areas, so welcome the approach, and obviously it's going to have really positive impacts on pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, so I think it's a positive move.
Thank you, Councillor Redmond and Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Like Councillor Redmond, it is a positive move. However, remembering there are areas already stated by, I think it was Councillor Patterson, there is areas in Falkirk district without people parking in the pavement. Our bin lorries when they get past, our emergency services when they get past. So taking the approach of identifying specific areas, I think is the right approach. Doing a carpet blanche like Edinburgh's done, I don't think it would have worked for us. But I think the approach that Gary and David and the teams took is the right approach. And hopefully through time, the residents will appreciate what we're trying to do. And if there is an opportunity in the future, like Councillor Murster's already mentioned, or Councillor Patterson, one of them mentioned about, it was Councillor Patterson, about areas where we could maybe identify where parking can happen, and we can get money to improve that. I think it will really. So thanks for the report, and looking forward to seeing it flourish going forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spears.
We welcome this rollout. It's a pity it's a two-tier system, and I'm sure we'll revisit it
Councillor Spears,
very soon.
Can I please just...
Sorry, you allow other people to
no,
speak.
I want to clarify that officers have said on more than one occasion it's not a two-tier system.
When you have areas where you can park on the pavement and areas where you can't, what would you call it?
It's not a two-tier system.
What are you pointing
Councillor
out to me?
Spears. I'm sorry, I'm not getting...
What do you call
okay,
it?
Councillor Spears, if you're not going to finish what you're saying, I'm going to move
I'll
on.
finish what I've got to say. I hope we concentrate on safe routes to school, especially surrounding parks where we don't have double yellow lines and people park and the kids are in the middle of the road trying to get to school before they see oncoming traffic. I hope the fines that are implemented go to help fix potholes and especially put our pavements back into a condition where they're safe to use. So I think as we roll this out, I think we'll revisit it again in the future, because this is something that drastically needs to improve. Thank you.
Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener, and as you mentioned in your remarks, this piece of legislation has been a long time coming, and I think it's important to acknowledge that it took an awful lot of determination from members of kind of all parties and none in Holyrood at different points to bring this forward, because it is so important and it's something that we should be all on board with. And I hope that we end up with no revenue stream from this, because I hope that it just changes behaviour and has compliance. I think it is important that there is the opportunity for exemptions, because there can be very limited circumstances, but it's not a case of saying, well, if we can't get cars, emergency vehicles through, people are allowed to park on the pavement. I think that all the criteria that's looked at will be very clear that if there's alternatives for parking nearby, or other ways, or parking on only one side of the carriageway, that those will be looked at first. So I'm very supportive. I've not brought forward an amendment, but I think this particular issue needs our full public support. That this has always been an issue, parking on pavements. It's selfish, it's wrong, it's always been wrong. The legislation is there now and we should all be getting behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we all agreed? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 7, which is museums, collection and rationalisation. And there is initially the opportunity for questions. There was an amendment brought forward, but the administration are happy to accept that amendment, incorporate it into the motion. Therefore, there would be no debate, but there's an opportunity for members' questions now. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. The rationalisation of our museum collection. People who have donated to this collection, will they be given the opportunity to have the pieces that they've donated for the people of Falkirk's benefit to see returned to them, or will they be offered? Question 1. Or will they go to schools or other parts of our portfolio on Falkirk Council where these pieces that were thought to be valuable enough to keep will then go in a wider distribution, and schools and whatever libraries will be able to show them. We also have groups, history groups in Grangemouth and Denny, I believe. I've spoke to the Denny one and the Grangemouth one before. Will they be given the opportunity to choose pieces that would show off their town, donated by members of the public? Or, as I hope, we don't end up selling them.
Okay, Mr McGuinness.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, through you, convener. Just taking your questions one point at a time. So those who have gifted or offered us to be custodians of their collections or items, the process is very much a well thought through process and approved by Museum Scotland. We will be looking at every single 36,000 items through the review panel to determine the place within our collection. This process is very much about protecting and securing the collection for the future. So each item will go through that process as detailed in Appendix 1 and 2. And when there will be a requirement, if we believe that item is a duplication or does not represent the heritage of the Falkirk district, we would then speak to the individual who presented that item to us to determine what's the most suitable route for that item to be either utilised, displayed or handed back to that individual. We would hope that through the exercise, take on your second point, Councillor Spears, that we would absolutely see the collection coming out of a store and being presented in an environment that's suitable. So part of this exercise will be absolutely to determine what capacity do we have in our future storage facility, what part of our collection is absolutely important to keep, and which parts of that collection are maybe better placed elsewhere for people to get access to. So that could be a school, it could be a new town hall, for example, certainly one area we'll explore through this exercise, or it could be another museum elsewhere in Scotland that has a much more appropriate and display collection that fits better with the items in our collection.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. I think it's great that we've agreed a way forward with regard to this report. I had submitted a number of questions to Mr McGuinness, but now that we've agreed the way forward, I'm quite happy to get a written reply to the questions. The only other thing that I would make a point of is, can we try and look at the possibility of getting a purpose-built facility in Grangemouth, somewhere maybe in the town centre, so that we can use that as a new museum? It'd be a good way to showcase all the artefacts that are in the store at the moment. They're a fantastic way forward, and I'm sure the people of Grangemouth would support that. Thanks.
Thank you, through you, convener. Councillor Nimmo, the intention is that the existing store, which is on our SPRs identified within the report, is not fit for purpose. We do, this exercise is very much to look at the collection in totality and to make sure that we have a collection and therefore determine the most appropriate storage going forward. The officers at this point in time are working on the basis that we look to secure a premises within the Grangemouth area.
If there are no further questions, it falls to myself to move the report. The Council's museum collection is an important and much loved asset that we have a responsibility to take care of for the future generations. It captures the history of the entire Falkirk Council area. Currently it's housed in a building that's completely unsuitable, and we want to create a modern storage solution that will improve public access and our ability to preserve those objects. To ensure that the needs of the collection are taken into proper consideration, it's important to conduct a rationalisation process. This process that's followed nationally through the agreed museum sector standards to ensure good collection management. It will enable us to review whether we have the items that, for example, should not have come into our collection, pose a danger to staff, or are beyond repair or have no local relevance. The research conducted through the process will also expand the information we have to show how important our objects are, information that will be available to the public, researchers and future generations, encouraging the ongoing care and improving our understanding of our shared heritage. Once we have a clearer idea of the future of the collection requirements, we can start to plan for a new facility to help us remove the risk currently posed by the overcrowding and the poor storage. And indeed, that would then take us to the point where we could actually have a change of displays or more items on display throughout the district relevant to the particular localities. I therefore want to thank officers for the work that they're doing, and indeed the work that's coming with 36,000 pieces to be reviewed. It's no mean task, and it will take time to do that. And move the recommendations as at 2.1, including the additional addendum as has been indicated. Councillor Garner. Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. Again, happy that our amendment was accepted. Just think it's really important that local groups and people are involved in this. Not often, it's a broad collection, so it might be difficult for to fully appreciate the historic importance of every one of them. But I'm sure that a lot of local people will be best placed to know what history matters to their area. So it would give them a chance to register their specific interest or historical period, and then they could potentially be consulted on not just whether the item should be kept, but maybe is there a better place for the item? Is there somewhere where it would have more historic significance? So I think that's really important, and hopefully that this will deliver positive outcomes, and we can eventually get some of this stuff out on display, which would be really good. I'd also like to thank Mr. McGuinness and his team for giving us a tour yesterday. It was great to see it all. And a shame it's kind of sitting no scene, but I think we're moving in the right direction. We've got a long way to go, but thank you.
I think one of the challenges that as a council we've had, we've not said no to anything, and it's a wee bit like you collect in your own home. At some point you do have to have a rationalisation process. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Mina. It's the right step forward. The building's no fit for purpose, and getting an account of what we have is right. And I know Councillor Nimmo gets very protective of being a Grangemouth Solon Station there, but it's Falkirk Council area. And there is some very important historical items in the museum, and hopefully when we get our new town hall, maybe we'll display some in the new town hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I think it's vital at this time we remember our historical past, especially our rich industrial heritage. As the future does not look too bright, maybe we can rest on some laurels by looking to our past. So we need to be careful what we do dispose of, and careful how we move some stuff on.
Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, and I haven't brought forward an amendment because I agree with the approach and I think it is welcome. I'm sure people in this household would accuse me of being a hypocrite to emphasise the importance of getting rid of artefacts of historical significance as I look down at my 25-year-old uni notes below me, but I think it is important that that we do look at the importance and rationalisation, and as much as our past is important and our heritage is important, that shouldn't come at the expense of the future, and our rationalisation of buildings, making sure that they're appropriate for net zero, etc., is crucial for the future of our citizens. So we need to balance that out together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We now move into our quasi-judicial process of community asset transfers, and the first item is community asset transfer of the New Caradon Cemetery, Bothy. I'll go to Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Convener. And as you point out, this is the quasi-judicial reports on community asset transfers. The first one is the New Caradon Cemetery, Bothy, as you said, and the proposal is to transfer property under a lease agreement at a rental of £1 per annum for 20 years to Business Community Group. The proposals from the group have been evaluated and they meet the obligations under the Community Empowerment Act and have therefore been validated, and the proposals in terms of the discounted rent are compatible with the disposal of land by local authorities regulations. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. At this stage, are there any questions for Mr. Kirkpatrick? Councillor Spears.
Can you tell me, is it well used? And is there a real desire to take it over, or is it just to keep the bothy there and available for the residents in Caradon?
Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Convener, apologies. I should have highlighted the proposals for the bothy are to support the reopening of the public conveniences, which is the subsequent report that we will have. The current bothy isn't used and hasn't been used for some time to support the cemetery provision, and therefore this is an opportunity that the community have identified to provide storage facilities in pursuance of their wider project, which is the opening of the Bowness public conveniences.
Very pleased to hear that something is coming here and it will remain and be open for the wider use. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, I am happy to move the report. Mr. Devine.
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you. We move on to community asset transfer of Bowness public convenience, and Councillor Devine's already declared an interest, so we'll just allow her to leave a minute. Okay, thank you. I'll go to Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Convener. And this is the second community asset transfer report, and as mentioned just a minute ago, this proposal is to facilitate the reopening of the public conveniences with a proposed lease for 20 years at £1 per annum to Business Community Group. Again, the proposals have been evaluated by colleagues and they are determined to be compatible with both the Community Empowerment Scotland Act and, in terms of the discounted rent, the disposal of land regulations, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Are there any questions to begin with? Councillor Spears.
Obviously pleased, and on behalf of my colleague, Councillor Anne Ritchie, will be pleased to see that these remain open. But is this going to be rolled out throughout the district, or is it just for the satellite towns?
The strategic property review identifies a number of properties, and at present we have 27 that are currently going through the asset transfer process, with potential 13 others coming. These cover a wide range of properties, including, in this case, a former public convenience, and therefore the short answer is yes, they are available to others, but it is reliant on groups coming forward to explore those opportunities.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, I will move the report. Councillor Rice.
It's Councillor Devine obviously was working with the group, but I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that comes to the end of that our public session. We move into private session, and we will just have a minute or two to allow the public to be excluded for the next item.